Now I'm just going to preface this video with a few things. Firstly, I have well over 100 hours in Three Houses and have played every route in the base game at least once, so I haven't actually played any of the DLC yet. Secondly, I am extremely biased towards Crimson Flower, if you haven't noticed, as it was the first route I played, and I feel as though many people are biased towards their first route. I always see people in the comments on Reddit posts or YouTube videos like, screw Edelgard, that power-hungry maniac, how could she kill my best boy Dimitri like that? And I'm over here like, hell yeah, give that blonde-looking, obsessed, glorified e-boy the old chop of the head. Thirdly, this is all just my opinion. And as I said, I'm of course biased. However, I do recognize flaws in Crimson Flower, like how damn short it is, and how they kind of build up those who live in the dark, only to kind of say that's something that needs to be defeated at the end of the route, and nothing actually happens. I still feel as though CF is the best route. It resonated with me the most, and really solidified Fire Emblem Three Houses as one of my favorite games of all time, only after that first initial playthrough, which is kind of hard to do in a game that has so much playthroughs, right? At least you would think so. I'll also say here that I think every route in Three Houses has its own positives and quirks to them, which make them great, and I did genuinely enjoy all of them, besides maybe the church route, because that really conflicts with CF, and you have to play CF to get to the church route, and that really sucks. But whatever, so put your pitchforks down. I don't hate everything. I genuinely enjoy a lot of the routes and the game, but as I did say already, in my opinion, CF is the strongest route, and I'm using this video as a way for me to explain why, and maybe afterwards you give the route a chance if you're one of those people who are really negative towards it after maybe playing a different route. But hey, if you're someone who already enjoys this route as much as I do, you'll definitely soak up this video and feed more into how great CF is and potentially strengthen your likingness for it. Lastly, of course, this video does contain spoilers for Fire Emblem Three Houses, so you have been warned. Now that that's out of the way, feel free to leave a like on the video if you enjoy, leave a comment whether you agree or disagree with me, because I'm more than happy to hear all sides of this, because I know how passionate the Fire Emblem fanbase can be. Just keep it civil down there, alright? Also, subscribe if you're new to keep up with all future content from me, which will more than likely include some more Fire Emblem stuff, because it is a series that I've newly found and grown to really enjoy. So I can already see from the notes I've gathered that this video is going to be a bit sporadic. It really can be hard to compile everything I think about Crimson Flower into a neat little package, but I'll try my best, starting with, well, the most obvious, the positive things I think about it. Starting pre-time skip in so many ways through dialogues or cutscenes, Rhea, to me at least, did not feel like someone I could ever trust, you know? So I want you to put yourself in Byleth's shoes for a second and forget what you might know from other routes. You know basically nothing about your own past, but know that your father Geralt knows Rhea in some sort of way, but doesn't seem to trust her and feels uneasy about returning to the monastery. The more you learn about the church, the stranger it becomes. Rhea seems overly possessive and protective over you, even though you've got no idea who she even is, putting you in her lap and singing to you like it's proper weird, right? You're a teacher at the monastery by that point, so she's essentially your boss. Then you have the Flame Emperor, who certainly seems to be on the wrong side of things. However, never directly harms you, pulls their forces back many times, appears to show conflict / well, disagreements between what you thought were their allied, which is those who live in the dark, and even offers to recruit you really early on. Then, in the Holy Tomb, you find out the Flame Emperor is Edelgard. There would be a lot of mixed emotions in finding that out, because Kronia killed your father, and by association, Edelgard seemed to have something to do with that. However, the way Edelgard acted after Geralt died, comforting you in a bit of a tough love kind of way, by trying to push you forward, and even saying if revenge is a path you want to take, that she'll help you out, makes it pretty clear that it wasn't something she wanted or had anything to do with in the slightest. In the contrast, Geralt always told you to be weary of Rhea, as well as the fact that the church is also killing anyone who doesn't align with their beliefs, i.e. the Western Church. Taking all of this into consideration, I would 110% trust and stand by Edelgard instead of Rhea any day. But hey, like I said, put yourself in Byleth's shoes. What would you choose with only that info? Seriously, the game literally also gives you that option too, and I can say I'd choose Edelgard. Also, a nice touch is if you do choose Edelgard at that point in the story, you can see Byleth smile when taking her side. This doesn't occur if you join Rhea, and I mean, when you join Edelgard as well, Rhea goes ape shit. It's actually kind of insane. And I mean, yeah, like I said, taking into consideration other routes, you might understand why, but just take into consideration everything you've only learnt from Crimson Flower, she seems like such a psycho, and I don't know why you would take her side over Edelgard in this situation without any other knowledge prior. Next, straight after the time skip, we've got the fact that Edelgard manages to keep the Black Eagles together for years in CF, whereas in all the other routes, the class just happens to show up at the monastery on the festival date to see if Byleth will be there after being missing for all those years. This proves to me at least how competent of a leader Edelgard actually is, being able to continue on the hard path she is on while also maintaining the morale of all her classmates and the whole empire. Of course, Byleth returning really helps the classmates and Edelgard push forward and acts as a reassurance to Edelgard that she isn't walking down the wrong path, but I mean, Edelgard is doing fine on her own, mostly, for like 5 years. I also think seeing Rhea break down and become not just a literal monster, but a figurative one too, by literally setting the whole city on fire in a dire attempt to claim some sort of victory against the Empire. This selfish and cowardly act really paints her in the kind of light I always saw her in. And personally, I hate that this side of her isn't really shown elsewhere. But I guess she's never pushed into as much of a corner as this in any other route, but I guess others may think the same about Edelgard if they played other routes first, but hey, like I said, I'm biased and this whole video is my opinion, and I feel kind of the same way about Dimitri as well. Both Rhea and Dimitri really break down in this route. I mean, Dimitri does another route, but in this route as well, they both have a common enemy and even team up, which I think is kind of crazy. They don't really have each other's best interests at heart, I don't think, but they have a team up, they have a common enemy, and they're both consumed by hatred and sorting after revenge. Surprisingly, out of everyone, Hubert's character really grew on me. I really disliked him through the first maybe 3/4 of the story, but finally, towards the end of Crimson Flower, he began to realize how committed you are to Edelgard's cause, and actually develops a respect for you, which is pretty wild considering how disrespectful he is to pretty much everyone else, including yourself throughout a majority of the game. But I feel like this respect is earned, and Hubert really develops a strong bond with yourself and the rest of the Black Eagles because there really isn't anything to hide anymore, like there was in the first half of the game, and he knows he can trust and rely on yourself and them. He really still can be a bit arrogant and stuck up though, but I do like his support with Petra and his pairing with her at the end, finally giving her the same respect as Edelgard, as she becomes the ruler of Bridget. Although not as powerful as the Empire, I think Hubert realizes finally that power isn't everything, and now that the war is all said and done and Edelgard's goals have been fulfilled in a sense, he can finally get on with his life. There's also the cool dialogue where Petra flat out tells Hubert that eventually he's going to choose her over Edelgard, and I mean, if your ending hasn't impaired like mine did, she was right. And they even have kids together, so that's a thing. Come to think of it as well, one of the reasons I enjoyed Crimson Flower so much is because it kind of draws a lot of parallels from something I've talked about before, that being Code Geass. Hear me out, right? Basically, replace Edelgard with Lelouch, the monastery with the high school, the Flame Emperor with Zero, Rhea with Lelouch's dad, and Dimitri with Suzaku in a kind of way. That one's a lot more loose, but it kind of does make sense too. Edelgard and Lelouch seem to share similar ideals in the form of rising up against the current great power and creating an all-around better world through a means of force. Although Edelgard generally seems quite a bit more level-headed than Lelouch, in the Crimson Flower route that is at least, and is a bit less sure of herself, but still very sure of herself, just not as much as I think Lelouch was in Code Geass, but he's a whole different can of worms. So now I'm going to go a bit into my theory about why I think each route should be taken individually without thinking about everything you've learnt in the other routes. Because personally, when I played each route in Three Houses, I tried not to think about what I learnt in the previous routes and take each route individually as its own story. I also feel like this is really important in Crimson Flower, because in that route itself, if people played other routes first, they tend to really hate Edelgard and Crimson Flower before they even give the route a chance. Same could be said for me because I played Crimson Flower first. I really didn't like Dimitri as a character, but I had to take that out of context. So let me explain a bit more. So in the context of CF, because that's really the whole premise of this video, think about if you played, for example, Blue Lions first, and you learn a lot more lore about Edelgard than you do in CF. And some people think that inherently makes the CF route weaker, but realistically, did you really need to know the things like Dimitri and Edelgard knowing each other prior? Because Edelgard didn't quite remember that, at least until Dimitri's last moments. I mean, CF was my first route, so I didn't really know that at all, thus making me see Dimitri in a different light to when I found out his backstory. But that's fine in the context of CF because you know as much as everyone else does and fight alongside Edelgard, making the hard decision of slaughtering many previous students. I didn't actually know you could spare them in my first run. and taking the bloody path to a world governed by people and not gods/dragons. Although, like I mentioned in the beginning, there's still the whole problem with those who slither in the dark, but Three Houses has a lot of lore behind it, so it gets confusing. There's actually a great video by Chase Skip on the lore behind the game, so feel free to check that out if you're interested in any of the lore aspects behind the game. The last thing I want to do in this video is critique Crimson Flower, because even though it's my favourite route, I still think there are some things in it that can be improved, and because it's my favourite route, I feel like I am much more critical of it than others. But to be fair, I don't find a lot wrong with it. The first thing is I do wish it was a longer route, because, well, it's the shortest route out of all of them, and I really feel like it should have ended with those who slither in the dark, rather than them, being finished in a line of dialogue, basically. Rhea was a great final boss, don't get me wrong, but I feel like that should have been a final boss leading up to a bigger final boss that could have actually rounded up the series a bit better and added an extra chapter or two, to make it a little bit longer. I also feel like there maybe should have been some points where people like Dorothea or Ferdinand should have been a bit more critical of what Edelgard was doing. I mean, Ferdinand himself was always trying to compete with her to become better than her and stuff like that, but towards the end, he just kind of goes along with what she does, which is fair. He has his reasoning behind that, but I feel like he should have actually came out of his shell a little bit more and kind of contested what she was doing, because he didn't always seem as comfortable with it as she was. Same with Dorothea. She never really seemed to be down for the whole war thing, but then she kind of just went along with it. I mean, maybe you could take into consideration how great Edelgard's leadership was, I guess, because she kept the Black Eagles together for the 5 years, so maybe there was something during that time that kind of made them all really motivated to be there, but we don't see that, and that's kind of part of the problem, I guess. But that's really it. Everything else I really enjoyed, as you can kind of see from me wanking off how good I think Crimson Flower is for the whole video. But nonetheless, I hope you all enjoyed. I hope if you haven't played Crimson Flower yet and have been putting it off, you do it. Take out of context every other route and just try and enjoy it as its own route and see how you go. Give it a chance, a lot of people seem to hate it. Nonetheless, hope you all enjoyed the video. That's it for me. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because it would be greatly appreciated, and leave a comment down below of what you thought of, my points or your own points. Just don't start fights down there. I know how, passionate Fire Emblem players and the Fire Emblem community can be. Just keep it civil, alright? We all have our opinions. This was mine. Feel free to share yours. Anyway, have a good day, guys. Peace.